January 17th, 1945. The Philippine Sea before dawn. The horizon is a thin charcoal line where ocean meets sky, and the air carries the low hum of generators and the steady slap of waves against steel hulls. Far from the main carrier formations, small American destroyers move slowly, almost alone, their decks darkened, their radar antennas rotating endlessly. The sea is calm, deceptively so, and above it stretches an empty sky that seems to promise nothing at all. Yet, on the glowing radar screens below deck, faint blips begin to appear, small, fast, converging. Something is coming. By this stage of the Pacific War, Japan's situation is dire. Its industrial capacity has been crippled by sustained bombing, its navy shattered at Midway, the Philippine Sea, and Leyte Gulf, and its experienced pilots largely gone. Facing an enemy whose shipyards, factories, and training pipelines seemed inexhaustible, the Japanese high command turned increasingly toward desperate measures. Among the most extreme was the organized use of kamikaze attacks, suicide strikes meant to trade human lives for American ships, shock, and fear. For Japanese commanders, these attacks were not only tactical weapons but psychological ones, intended to pierce what they believed was an American vulnerability, sensitivity to loss and chaos. What Japanese planners expected was simple. A lone aircraft flying low over the sea or descending out of cloud cover would be nearly invisible until the final moments. Radar, they believed, was imprecise, easily confused by weather, sea clutter, or sheer speed. Kamikaze pilots were instructed to approach from multiple directions at varying altitudes, overwhelming defenses and striking with sudden violence. In this vision of the battlefield, American sailors would only have seconds to react, and confusion would reign. What they encountered instead was something fundamentally different. Beginning in late 1944, particularly during the battles for the Philippines and later Okinawa, the U.S. Navy deployed radar picket ships, destroyers and destroyer escorts positioned miles ahead of the main fleet. Their role was dangerous and unglamorous, to serve as early warning sentinels. Equipped with advanced air search radar such as the SK and later the more refined SP radar sets, these ships extended the fleet's electronic vision far beyond the horizon. Their antennas swept the sky relentlessly, transforming invisible airspace into measurable distance and time. Japanese aircraft, even single-engine fighters stripped down for speed and payload, were detected dozens of miles out. U.S. Navy after-action reports repeatedly noted initial contacts at ranges of 70 to 100 miles under favorable conditions. Radar operators, often young men trained in months rather than years, learned to distinguish aircraft tracks from weather echoes and sea returns. The blips on their screens became warnings, then predictions, then coordinated responses. For Japanese commanders monitoring the results of kamikaze operations, the shock was profound. Attacks that were meant to be sudden were intercepted early. Combat air patrols were vectored directly toward incoming planes, guided by radar-controlled fighter direction officers aboard carriers and picket ships. Anti-aircraft batteries were manned and ready long before the first engine noise was audible. The moment of surprise, the psychological heart of the kamikaze concept, was being stripped away. Admiral Mitome Ugaki, commander of the 5th Air Fleet, wrote in his diary of frustration at the growing difficulty of penetrating American defenses. While he attributed some failures to pilot skill and weather, the increasing efficiency of U.S. detection systems was impossible to ignore. Post-war Japanese analyses similarly acknowledged that American radar and coordination severely reduced the effectiveness of suicide attacks, especially as the campaign progressed. The emotional contrast was stark. Japanese pilots were told they would descend upon an unaware enemy, striking decisively, restoring honor and balance. Instead, many found themselves intercepted far from their targets, chased by fighters they never saw coming, or engulfed in anti-aircraft fire guided by unseen eyes. For American sailors on radar picket duty, the experience was equally intense but inverted. They knew they were targets, isolated, exposed, and often first to be attacked, but they also trusted the glowing screens before them. The radar pulse became a steady heartbeat, a rhythm of detection and response that offered control amid chaos. Historical records from the Battle of Okinawa underscore this reality. Of the hundreds of kamikaze aircraft launched, many were detected early and destroyed before reaching the main fleet. Radar picket ships suffered heavily, some were sunk, many damaged, but their sacrifice provided the fleet with precious minutes that saved carriers, transports, and thousands of lives. Admiral Raymond Spruance later acknowledged that without radar pickets, losses would have been far higher. The transformation was not merely tactical, it was ideological. Japanese commanders confronted a form of warfare that valued systems over individual sacrifice, coordination over singular acts of valor. American radar, mass-produced and standardized, represented industrial power translated directly into battlefield awareness. Each rotating antenna symbolized not just technology, but a philosophy that preparation, information, and collective defense could overcome even the most extreme expressions of human will. The recurring symbol of this transformation was the radar screen itself, a simple circular display, green lines sweeping endlessly, turning empty air into actionable knowledge. To American crews, it was reassurance. To Japanese planners, it became an invisible wall. No matter how brave the pilot or how determined the mission, the screen kept watching, measuring, warning. As the war moved toward its conclusion, this imbalance only grew. Radar improved, integration tightened, and American production ensured that losses, ships, equipment, even trained operators were replaced with relentless speed. Japan, by contrast, faced scarcity at every level: fuel, aircraft, trained personnel, and time itself. In the end, the stunned realization among Japanese commanders was not simply that kamikazes could be tracked, it was that they were facing an enemy whose strength lay not in single weapons or heroic acts, but in abundance of machines, of coordination, of shared purpose. Radar pickets did not win the war alone, but they embodied a larger truth about modern conflict. Long after the sea battles ended, the image remains: a darkened ship at the edge of the fleet, antenna turning, screen glowing softly in the night. A silentless pulse moving outward, touching the sky, returning with knowledge. In that quiet exchange between signal and echo lay a powerful idea: that freedom and democracy, when backed by collective effort and material abundance, could see farther, react faster, and endure longer than any act of desperation.